Hi, everyone. My name is Meera Raja. I'm the SVP of Deep Tech at P33. P33 is an economic... louder? Okay. Just closer? Is that better? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Zach. Okay, hi, everyone. Let's start over. My name is Meera Raja. I'm the SVP of Deep Tech at P33. P33 is an economic development nonprofit based out of Chicago, and our goal is to inclusively grow the tech economy of our region. I lead all of our work around our regional deep tech and science priorities, of which, as you may have heard a little bit about, quantum is one of them. So very excited to be here and talk a little bit about Illinois' quantum ecosystem. I'm going to have this talk be a little bit of just sharing some of the stuff we're doing, how we're thinking about it, a little bit of playbook, and some of the exciting things that we're working on. I'm going to start with a weird question, especially to this room. But you know, sometimes there's a lot going on in Illinois. It's really exciting. And sometimes we sort of step back and be like, oh my gosh, like how did we get here? And I'm curious, by show of hands, has anyone seen the sort of like voiceover meme sound thing going around on social media where it's like a crazy picture of someone and then there's this thing that says, like a voiceover narrator that's like, man, I wonder how we got here. Has anyone seen this? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? That's a bit of what it feels like to be in Illinois, right? So the sound bite, which I wasn't sure would transfer over here, so I didn't even try to make it onto the slide, starts with being like, yep, that's me, and it shows a picture of the person, which here it's Illinois. And for some reason, can you all see like an Illinois background on there? On that screen? Because I can see it on this screen. Anyway, Illinois is around there. And then it shows all these things that are happening. So you say, oh my gosh, we're getting a lot of press. We're hoping to be the quantum research world. Working with IBM. Other things, $500 million, next Manhattan Project. Exciting, exciting, exciting. And then the meme goes, now you might be wondering how we ended up here. And so that's a bit of what I'm going to talk about today, is how did we end up here. And what I like to think about what we're doing is it's a bit of a Midwest sensibility meets a quantum leap. So we'll start with that Midwest sensibility, please. The way we think about it in Illinois is one of the most important things that we have been doing for a long time. And I know this is hard to say in front of a bunch of, quantum scientists. Arguably, some of the hardest things that you have to do to get a lot of these things off the ground is actually set up that ecosystem. And that's something that we've been doing for a really long time. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this slide talking about sort of what is in our ecosystem and why we're pretty excited about it. So our ecosystem is powered by foundational assets and world-class infrastructure. Start with our Anchor Collaborative. That's the Chicago Quantum Exchange. If you've talked to us in Chicago about quantum, you've probably talked to them. They've been going since about 2017, and their goal is really to bring this group together, bring our quantum ecosystem together. They're one of the largest quantum consortia globally, and they bridge academia, national labs, industry. They've started to think about policy. They're sort of bringing everyone who needs to be there at the table together. They represent over 200 researchers, over 50 companies. There are nonprofit partners in there, and they've been at it. And it's been hard work, right? Quantum wasn't a big name almost a decade ago, and they were trying to make this happen. They're based out of the University of Chicago. Along with that, we have world-class research and talent, which is pretty exciting. In the Chicago, Illinois region, we have 4 R1 universities. We have 2 national labs. We have a crazy pipeline of talent. So we're top 10 in the US for STEM degrees. We actually did a little bit of a calculation about CQE's sort of region they serve, which is just around the Chicago MSA. So mostly Illinois and then a little bit into Indiana and Wisconsin. And we found that if you did an analysis and looked at the degrees that were awarded that were sort of quantum related, we were awarding 60,000 degrees annually, quantum related, or relevant fields. And we're second in the US for quantum graduates. And we have the US's first quantum PhD program. So we're doing a lot there, both in the research side with all these universities and these national labs, and really producing that talent pipeline. It's not up there, but we also think a lot about how we can be inclusive in that and making sure, even at the start, we're building that in. So we work very closely with our community colleges, both in the region as well as across the state. We have the 3rd largest community college system in the US. And so really thinking about what roles do they play, both on their own in building some of this talent, as well as going into the pipelines into places like University of Illinois. We also have 4 of the National Quantum Initiative Act centers, which is great. A little small in this picture again, but essentially through the National Quantum Initiative Act, there were 10 centers around the US and 4 of them are in Illinois. So that's another really great asset we have. We can start adding that to the list. We have some state-of-the-art infrastructure, which is really exciting. I'll read off of that here. We have we have a couple supercomputing centers, one at Argonne and one at UIUC. We have a 250-mile, nearly 250-mile quantum network, which is one of the largest in the nation. We have lost my place. We have all sorts of other things. We have quantum test beds, a quantum materials foundry. We've been somewhat recently announced Illinois Quantum Microelectronics Park, which I'll talk a little bit about a little bit later, which is great. So we have the collaborator to bring people together. We have the research and the talent. We have some federal stuff going on, and then we have the infrastructure. What about the startups? So we have the nation's first quantum startup accelerator called Duality. It's gone through 4 cohorts, and I think 20 startups from across the US and the world have come through that. And it's a 12-month program that provides funding and access to all of our infrastructure and business skills and a whole number of things that get these folks in, meeting other people who are doing quantum. Our first cohort actually, I think all of them stayed in Chicago afterwards if they weren't from it, which was really exciting. So it's a great way we're sort of starting to build some of that quantum startup knowledge. And then I think one of the really powerful things that we have is we have these incentives with the state to build and grow these businesses. So once we get these startups in, we're really excited to think about what is the best ecosystem we can build to have them here and have them stay. And for that, we work very closely with our city and our state. This is our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity that I've shown there in a picture, but they have like a comprehensive suite of incentives and people helping you to be able to tell you how you can come in and work with us. They have a $140 million venture capital program that's investing in Illinois-based startups with a focus on key sectors, of which quantum is one of them. Quantum actually made our 5-year economic plan this year, which is amazing because it means we're starting to think about, again, not just the science part of it, but the other parts of it. I know in the last talk they talked about how they were keeping it strictly research, and so I'm going into the other parts of it here for Illinois. There's a $20 million initiative for business or incentives for businesses, pool of incentives for businesses who are starting in emerging businesses, who are startups, who are part of quantum and quantum-related fields. There's a number of tax benefits that are very much tailored to these smaller companies that are starting, which is really exciting. And then with that new quantum park that I'm talking about, there are a number of there's sort of a quantum opportunity zone that's been created by it. So if you want to come co-locate around there, there's lots of advantages to being a part of that. So you can see with this is a really nice sort of comprehensive way that we're thinking about it and how we're building out that entire ecosystem. So we're pretty excited about it. We've been working on it for a while, and seems like it's kind of working. So these assets and wins are drawing a number of companies to Illinois. We have quantum and quantum enabling companies that are either partnering with us or are now based in Illinois or have, pieces of themselves in Illinois. Some of them are here. Obviously, Inflection is a Colorado-based company, but a part of it's in Illinois. You've seen IRIQ out there and others. We have a number of other companies that are talking to us through that pipeline of the CQE. They have over 50 corporate partners. We actually are the second highest number of deals made for startups in quantum, and so that amounts to a little over almost $35 million in startup deals, which is great. So we're really starting to get sort of the industry there moving in, startup going, and so with that. Along with that, to support that, to help make that happen, we've been really lucky. We've had a remarkable amount of public, private, and state investment that supports our work. So if we think about me telling you this is a bit of our Illinois playbook and how we're thinking about it, we have the ecosystem, we have the companies moving in and stuff happening, and we really need this support. So we have some federal support. I talked a little bit about the National Quantum Initiative Act labs that we have, and the funding we got from that. Through the EDA Tech Hubs program, we are a Tech Hubs designee. We're one of 2 of quantum in that EDA program. You'll hear from Zach after this, who's from the Colorado one. He's doing really cool stuff, so make sure you stick around for that. We have some NSF engines work going on. And then We have a partnership with DARPA, which is really, really exciting, through their quantum benchmarking initiative. So it's a co-investment with the state where DARPA's putting in some funding, the state's putting in some funding, and you're inviting companies who are thinking about quantum computing to come in and say, hey, come test this out. Like, tell us if you have an idea towards quantum computing, towards utility scale quantum computing. We'll evaluate it. We might fund you. Come test it out in our park. Let's see if it works. So it's really exciting. We also have some private support. We have an IBM Illinois Discovery Accelerator Institute that's been going for a while around materials and computing. We had a few big investments in the last couple of years between University of Tokyo, University of Chicago, Google around some supercomputer work and some other things. So there's some, really interesting things that are being enabled by some of this funding. And this is like a little bit biased, but I think one of the really exciting things that we have is state support. And so one of our biggest champions is actually our governor. So if you've heard Governor Pritzker talk at all about quantum, he talks often about how he's a quantum nerd. And so, which is amazing because it means he gets up there, he talks about this, he really believes in it. I said, I mentioned a little bit ago, we're in the 5-year economic plan, but along with that, the $1 billion is a little bit inflated because it includes some federal, but he's dedicated a lot of funding to this, right? We're in the state budget. He put in $500 million in the state budget. There's another $200 million that's been put in for other infrastructure. We just hired a chief quantum officer, which I think might be the first person with that title. So our state has a chief quantum officer. They have a dedicated line for people coming in thinking about quantum for us to be able to support you coming to our region. So very, very exciting stuff. And kind of standard, right? So you're like, well, you started with this, like you're doing big, exciting stuff, this big quantum leap, and I've just told you how we're setting up an ecosystem. We'll ignore that for a second. So the question is, where's the leap? So I'd like to take the last little bit of talking about some of the really big things that we're looking to move forward with. Part of this for us, again, with that Midwest accessibility is very much how do we set up our ecosystem? How do we get everyone sort of to this line? And then let's move from there. So I'm going to talk about two and a half things that we're doing. But all of it is about creating some of this value at scale. So how can we get everyone lined up and ready to go? How can we start thinking about our big bets and how to realize our value at scale? So one of this comes from what I think a lot of us have been talking about. Both of these come from around talking about this idea that quantum in a bubble is not really going to produce this large value that we're talking about. We really need to start thinking about how do we get industry adoption? How do we get all the players at the table so that we can move this into solving really, really big challenges? One of the advantages in Illinois is that we have a highly diversified regional industry base that's ready to explore quantum. A very weird fact that we often state about our economic development or about our economy is that no sector in Illinois is more than, no one takes up more than 14% of our market, which means we have a highly diversified economy, which is amazing, which is kind of makes us generalists, but is amazing for something like quantum because it means you have all these sandboxes you can play in. Very, very exciting. Here are a few of the folks that we've talked to who are interested in thinking about this. And so taking this and taking sort of what we have and what we could be naturally competitive at and how we could best move the scale for ourselves, but also for quantum overall, what we really started thinking about is how can we move this bigger? One way is we can pick off each of those companies, right? We can go talk to them. We can say, hey, come work with us. Let's tell you about quantum. Let's make it happen. But we wanted to think a little bit bigger. And so as a part of our tech hubs, what we actually proposed is instead of going company by company, what if we go industry by industry? So there's a lot on this that I just made pop up on this slide. But essentially what we wanted to do is we wanted to say, what if we actually take entire industries? Let's start actually over on this side, over on the right side, instead of the left, and think about what if we, how do we think about what's our most use case ready solution? How do we work on that? I'm getting 5 minutes, so I'm gonna rush through this because I wanna get to the bigger stuff a little bit later. And so using finance as an example, which is something that most people say is the most sort of quantum ready field, you can talk to one bank or two banks or one credit card company, but what if you talk to all of them together? And then what if you bring in a quantum expert like IBM who's leading this project for the Tech Hub? What if you bring in your finance people? Then you think about, well, finance is a really big security problem. What if you bring in the FBI? What if you bring in the Fed? You need a data platform. What if you bring in NORC that does a data platform? Financial fraud disproportionately affects our Black and brown communities in Chicago. So what if you bring in the folks who are thinking about that with the Financial Health Network? And suddenly you have everyone at the table you need to solve this problem. And you can do it thinking about quantum. And when you're done doing that, and when you've talked to the quantum experts like IBM, and you can think through this and you can say, okay, well, here's a solution, you suddenly haven't just moved the needle by 10% or 20%. You've suddenly like leapt over, and everyone in that box is ready to do quantum now, and you're ready to go. So we're very excited about this, and we're very excited about not just finance, but sort of the pipeline of industries that we're setting up together. Thinking about for each of these, you need a quantum champion, you need an industry champion, and then you can start getting everyone going. So this is something we are thinking about through our Tech Hubs work. Can lead to massive impact for the region. We estimate just for our region within a decade of doing that work, along with some infrastructure building and some workforce. We can create 30,000 jobs, train 50,000 people, support a number of companies, and really create $60 billion in economic value. So you can sort of see moving that at scale, how exciting this can be. But wait. There's more. I know I have 3 minutes. I'm going to be fast. I've talked about this quantum and microelectronics park. This is something very exciting that we announced earlier in the year. This is a first of its kind park for quantum scale-up and related quantum and advanced microelectronics research and development. This is something located on the south side of Chicago in an old steel mill. So it's not only going to be the quantum value that you're thinking about, but there's a huge economic benefit to it. It's very much what's happening, how we're revitalizing that area that's had a lot of disinvestment since that park closed. How are we thinking about workforce? How are we focusing a lot of our efforts to develop that region, but really push quantum forward? PsiQuantum is our first tenant, and they're going to build the first. Their goal is to build the world's first. The U.S. location of their first utility scale computer. The DARPA thing that I talked about is also going to be taking place in there. We'll also have workforce centers. We'll have shared use facilities, so it'll be a place that other companies can come in and work on things. Very, very, very exciting stuff. It's huge development. That was one of the headlines on the very first page where it said Chicago's undertaking a new Manhattan project. It's referring to this. We have $500 million from the budget dedicated to, or I think $200 million is dedicated to this, but a very large amount dedicated to this. Very, very, very exciting. And then to close out, on this park, so we have PsiQuantum as the initial tenant, and we just made an announcement today. Did anyone today, for any reason, hear a Chicago announcement, besides Paul, who I know heard the announcement? So just a few hours ago today, the big announcement coming out of Illinois was that our amazing partners, IBM, me partnering with the state, along with some of the universities, local universities, to build the first of its kind national quantum algorithm center, and it's going to be on the campus, which is incredibly exciting. So along with helping us build that computer, IBM will also be putting its quantum computer there. I believe, and I'm going to watch you if you nod correctly, I believe it's the same thing that's out on the, same model that's out on the floor, I think is what's coming out there. So you can see example of what's going to show up there. Very exciting stuff. That's the kind of thing that I think is really going to, so now we're going to have two different kinds of computers out there. One of them that's really going to be thinking about how do you actually get that stuff I was talking about on the earlier slide where we can really move forward. How do you get the quantum folks? How do you get the scientists? How do you get the industry people? How do you get all of those folks in the same room talking to each other so that we can get never before industries in front of quantum, never before seen industries in front of quantum, work with them on the problems they need to solve, and really think about how we're solving these bigger intractable problems. I got the nod from over here, so I think I need to stop. But do we do questions? I don't know if I have questions. I rushed through the end of that, but questions? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.